This is what being a hostage under Hamas terrorists in Gaza is truly like.
את בסרט, רק שאת השחקנית.
Danielle Aloni and some of her family members, including her 6-year-old daughter Emilia, were snatched into Gaza by Hamas terrorists on October 7th from her sister's house. These Hamas animals didn't just knock on their door that morning and escort them out to the van outside. Instead, they tormented, tortured, abused, and kidnapped them. Last week, we heard the heartbreaking story of Emilia, another Hamas captivity survivor who went through what she called a Holocaust. And now, Danielle's story, this isn't fake news. It isn't propaganda. It isn't anti-Palestinian, pro-Israel media war footage. Nobody paid Danielle to say this, and nobody scripted these scenes to make them out to be real. One cannot make up what Danielle is about to tell you. This is an original testimony, heartbreaking, undisputed, and authentic, coming directly to you.
שורפים לנו את הבית, נכנסו המחבלים, ניסו לירות עלינו ושרון ודוד ניסו לסגור את הדלת והם שורפים את הבית, אנחנו נשרפים בבית, אנחנו פשוט נשרפים, אם אנחנו נצא ירו עלינו, אם לא נשרף בתוך החדר, כל העשן נכנס לתוך החדר עכשיו, זהו, היריות בחוץ, נמות ככה או ככה, זה הסוף שלנו.
Danielle and her family went to the safe room after hearing sirens that morning. Every Israeli knows this noise, this unpleasant, off-putting sound that no Israeli can truly get out of their head. Very quickly, not only did they hear rockets overhead, they began hearing gunshots. Hamas terrorists entered the house with only one thing between them and her family, a door.
עברות עוד 2 דקות, ואנחנו שומעים רעש משהו מתלקח, ואנחנו מבינים, שורפים אותנו, שורפים לנו את הבית. לפני זה אגב מנתקים לנו את החשמל ואת האוויר, זאת אומרת שאנחנו יושבים בממ"ד בלי חשמל, בלי תאורה, בלי אוויר, חושך מוחלט. ואנחנו מבינים ששורפים אותנו.
I must pose the following question to you, and frankly, if you struggle to answer this question, or somehow find a way to dispute it, I'm not entirely sure even soul-searching would solve the problem for you. What exactly is the difference between what Danielle described as the terrorists began burning their house and tactics Nazis used to mass murder Jews during the Holocaust? What's the difference? First is the literal mechanism behind this barbaric act, which in this instance is death-trapping humans inside of a blocked area, giving them 2 options. Leave to the unknown, which could very well result to being murdered, or stay in the room and burn to death. And on top of the actual mechanism, the second thing is the motive behind it, the why. Back during the Holocaust, there were concentration camps, there were labor camps, there were transit camps, and there were death camps. What was the main tactic of the mass murder during the Holocaust? Convince handfuls of innocent Jews that they are going down to shower and send them to an underground chamber. Then lock the doors and turn the ceiling sprinklers on, which ejected carbon monoxide gas, gassing them to death. The motive back in the 1930s and 40s was no different than the motive on October 7th. Murder, slaughter, burn, eradicate, rape, torture, and exterminate as many living Jews as physically possible.
עוברות עוד כמה שניות, ואמיליה צורחת, אמא, אני לא נושמת. ידעתי שבטח בשלב מסוים גם האש תיכנס. עכשיו זה ישן, אבל בטח גם האש תיכנס. ומרגע אחד של התעשתות, אמרתי, ניערתי את שרון שכבר הייתה במצב עילפון. אמרתי לה, קומי, יהיה קל יותר אם נמות ביריות, זה יהיה מהיר. אבל אנחנו לא יכולות לעשות את זה לבנות, אנחנו לא יכולות למות בגסיסה איטית כזו. עדיף ביריות, זה יהיה קצר ומהיר. כבר השארנו הודעת פרידה. היא צריכה לבחור במוות. באיזה מוות יהיה קל יותר, מהיר יותר.
Actually, you know what? I changed my mind. I can think of one difference back from the 30s and 40s in the Holocaust to this situation right here. Danielle had the choice of how she wanted her and her family to die. What? They didn't have a say or choice in forced murder back in the 30s and 40s during the Holocaust. In this very moment, Danielle did what any mother would do. Think about her children and any other kids first and foremost, and make any form of suffering as minimal as possible for them. That's the choice she was given. You know what? I can name one more similarity. What happened back in the Holocaust and again on October 7th against Jews, just in case you fail to see and recognize it for yourself. Psst, hint, it starts with a G. Genocide. Danielle and her family members left the safe room expecting to get shot, but instead they were taken outside and the very next thing that they knew, on their way to Gaza. Danielle had Emma in her lap the entire ride until...
פשוט לוקח לי, אני במצב שבו היא הייתה עליי, הוא בא ולוקח לי, מושך לי את הילדה מהידיים. ובשלב הזה פתחתי את הפה. בשלב הזה ניסיתי לצעוק, בנתי. זה לא עזר. לקח לי את הילדה, כיוון אליי הרובה, סימן לי לשבת.
You know, we could start this at the morning of October 7th with rocket fire or mass killings in the street or paragliders coming down through the sky to the Nova Festival, spraying people down with rifles, entering villages and houses and burning them on fire, or raping women, or kidnapping men, women, boys, girls, young and elderly. The amount of wrong began the morning of October 7th. Hamas apologists want to continuously talk about how well the hostages were treated. Really? I have had enough of that. It is inexcusable. The same people that began lighting houses on fire with innocent civilians inside of them to force them to exit or blatantly burn them to death are the ones Hamas apologists want to give credit to for an Excellence in Service and Hospitality Award back in captivity to the very same people they kidnapped? What kind of logic is that? Really? Furthermore, these same host families who treated their guests allegedly well snatched a mother's child out of her hands. Any level-headed human being, practical human being, knows that a 6-year-old daughter without her mother is a 6-year-old daughter without hope. In this situation, she's clueless and basically lifeless. So how could one actually be level-headed and do something like this? Oh, they couldn't. Because none of them are level-headed.
והדבר הבא שאני זוכרת זה פיר של מנהרה. מורידים אותנו למטה. הדבר הראשון עושים, תולשים ממני את התכשיטים. ממששים.
Danielle and the hostages were snatched and dragged into Gaza, some shot, some injured, some ill, barefoot like animals. Animals at a zoo on display, then taken underground to a tunnel city 40 kilometers below, without water, food, air circulation, or any other necessities just to survive. Forget for a second Emilia, the 6-year-old girl. Forget for a second the elderly, who have needs for certain medical attention and care. Any individual, child, elderly, young, old, male, female, isn't designed to operate nor can sustain proper function under these circumstances. Well, yeah, for Hamas, that is the whole point. Why would they treat the hostages well? Why? Why would they greet them with open arms? Why would they choose to enhance their lives? They wouldn't, and they didn't. That is the point. That is exactly what you do with human beings that you have been programmed to deeply hate, utterly despise. You want them to be tortured and suffer. What else do you need to understand? What, the gunshot wounds aren't enough? The rape allegations aren't enough? The black and blue marks, bruises, and blood-covered bodies aren't enough? Then what is enough to not just understand, but genuinely accept the level of severity that what these hostages went through, and those still there continue to go through, is simply torturous? You saw torture live streamed on your smartphone October 7th, and you think it just ended when they pressed stop on the recording?
כל דבר אנחנו צריכים לבקש רשות, שירותים, לשטוף ידיים, אסור לדבר.
בכלל.
לחישות. באיזה עולם מישהו ישאיר ילדים בשבי? אבל השאירו ילדים בשבי. השאירו מבוגרים בשבי.
I find it mind-boggling that with all of the testimonies and survival stories of hostages having been released from captivity in Gaza, the majority of the world still finds a way to continue to excuse it, to excuse the barbarity, to excuse the kidnapping, to excuse the raping, to excuse the torture, to excuse the murder, to excuse the extermination, and to excuse the genocide. In what world do we, as human beings, who all start at the same starting point of a fetus, find ways to excuse what many of us are taught as wrongdoings, as simple, unethical behavior? How do we skip the entire narrative from the morning at 6:30 October 7th straight to captivity in Gaza, and then honor the terrorists and those who participated in good service? Think of all the people in your life you know with kids who you deeply love. If any person in the world right now, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, black, white, gay, straight, snatch the child of the person that you're thinking of, and even under the best imaginable conditions in captivity, what would you do? Would you go and gather intel that the child is being properly taken care of and then applaud them for taking good care of that child? Or would you condemn the blatant act of kidnapping somebody else's child, one who you supposedly claim that you love dearly, and then do everything in your willpower to fix it? I'm waiting for your answer. Clearly, you would condemn it, and you would do anything in your willpower to fix something for someone who you love dearly. Oh, is it the fact that the people in this situation are Jewish? Is that the problem for you? Interesting.
מה מחזיק אותך בשבי?
הילדה. הילדה. נטו הילדה. צריך לדאוג לה. צריך לתווך לה את המציאות הזו. על כל יום שאנחנו כאן, את בוחרת מתנה. הייתי חייבת לשתר לה חוזק.
Maybe Emilia getting taken into captivity with Danielle was the best thing that could have happened. Honestly, for both of them. Without Emilia, who knows if Danielle would have lost it at some point and given up. A daughter is a mother's most prized possession. Her child gave her the strength that she had no choice but to convey back to her. Mom and dad are all kids know growing up. And Danielle's courage, strength, and resilience allowed her to instill that in Emilia.
כל רעש הוא מבחינתה טריגר לרעש שהיא זוכרת. עד היום היא הולכת לפעמים ועושה ככה. עד היום היא מסתכלת לצדדים. עד היום המשחקים שלה עוסקים באנשים רעים ונגן על עצמנו. עד היום השאלות שלה במקומות שהיא לא מכירה. יש כאן אנשים רעים? יש כאן אנשים רעים?
Hamas got what they wanted on October 7th. They succeeded in causing vast amounts of damage. It goes beyond the 7th of October. This is exactly what any merciless and remorseless animal would want. Emilia is just 6 years old now, but with lifelong trauma. Her future consists of ongoing recovery, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Fear is now instilled in her blood, and that is not just a removable source. You don't just surgically remove that from someone's body. Hamas wants Israelis and Jewish people to live in fear from the second they wake up in the morning to the moment they lay their head down at night. Emilia's massacre began at 6:30 a.m. on October 7th. And from now on at 6:30 a.m., that is her reference point. And Hamas takes a lot of credit for this fear, this caused trauma, and the brutality that goes beyond the life of captivity. Emilia didn't have to think this way, feel this way, or ask these sorts of questions, or live life on the basis of fear every single day. Now, she does. And after 49 days, Danielle and Emilia were finally released from captivity.
טלטלו לנו את הרכב בצלב האדום. אם הגענו, אם שרדנו 49 ימים, ולא מתנו מכל כך הרבה הזדמנויות שיכולנו למות בהם, החל מה-7 לאוקטובר, אז כאן אנחנו נמות. עוד פעם, זה היה ממש דז'ה-וו ליום החטיפה. הם היו המונים, הם צבעו על המכוניות של הצלב האדום, הם טלטלו את המכוניות בטירוף, שאת חושבת שאת שנייה מתהפכת. אמיליה הייתה בהיסטריה, בצעקה, הורגים אותנו, הורגים אותנו.
Those people shaking and attacking the car, yeah, maybe they weren't wearing Hamas uniforms. Yeah, those are your ordinary people, your innocent civilians in Gaza, correct? Innocent? What about any of this entire situation involves innocent? The crowds of Gazans who joined in on the street when they both arrived and when they left are not innocent. Start playing scenarios through your head and begin to imagine what would have happened if they were not in the Red Cross vehicle. Let your imagination run, and now tell me how innocent your thoughts remain.
מה עכשיו? הלחימה התגברה. זה אומר עוד בעיות הרבה יותר חמורות של הספקה, של מזון, של תרופות, ומורל כללי של אנשים.
אני מדבר על זה שעצם השיחה הזאת מעלה את המחיר. מה התגובה של המשפחות?
מה זאת אומרת מעלה את? תגידי, מה, את חושבת שהם לא יודעים שהחטופים הם מהבטן הרכה שלנו? מה זה מעלה את המחיר? הם יודעים שאנחנו משלמים ונשלם מחיר מאוד כבד. עצם החטיפה הזו זה הבטן הרכה שלנו, כי אנחנו מקדשים את החיים. כי זה העם היהודי.
Remember earlier that we talked about the Holocaust? Back then, when they were given breadcrumbs to eat, you know what parents did with those crumbs? They chose not to eat, but let their kids instead. Just as Danielle said, in Judaism, we sanctify life, those alive and those dead. They come before anything, by any means. The truth of the Jewish belief system is that every Jewish life matters. 1, 10, 100, 1,000, and that is your responsibility as a Jew, as a nation, to look out for one another. That is the code of conduct, and you never break that code.
איך מתאוששים מכזה דבר?
את בוחרת כל יום מחדש בחיים. את עטופה במשפחה, בחברים. וההודיה שלי החלה כבר שם, על כל יום שניצלנו, על כל יום ששרדנו, סליחה, על כל יום שלילדה שלי היה מה לאכול, על כל יום שלא מתנו שם.
Danielle and Emilia's story still does not do enough justice for you and I to completely comprehend and understand the strength that they possess, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and religiously. Nothing about their captivity was good or pleasant. It is not possible for anyone to make that claim anymore. No hostage coming out of Hamas captivity is going to be released and then claim that things went well and we were taken care of. There is no excuse for excusing what happened on October 7th in Israel. There is no excuse for excusing the demonic people of Hamas who tortured and are still torturing Israeli citizens underground away from the public. There is no excuse for excusing the blatant hate-driven genocide disguised as a fight for freedom. How can you claim to be a freedom fighter when you can't even free the very people that you so-called govern or rule? And right now, in this moment, you still have managed to fish for and find an excuse to excuse the inexcusable. Then it is not just a coincidence that you have chosen to excuse these atrocities when pertaining to Jews.